I was taught that growing food depends on two strict rules. First, plants must have soil. Rule 2 is that plants need sunlight. Every garden and farm I have ever visited follows those rules. But I found something sitting on grocery shelves right now that breaks both. It needs no soil. It ignores sunlight completely. It eats cardboard coffee grounds and old shirts, turning them into protein within 3 weeks. It produces more food than the material I feed it. In April 2025, NASA sent it to space. You and I have walked past it 1,000 times. Subscribe to my channel and I will show you why. This organism is Pleurotus austriatus. I simply know it as the oyster mushroom. Don't dismiss this as some niche hobby for foragers. I am telling you, this is not a plant. It belongs to a separate kingdom of life. I noticed it has no roots at all. It has no leaves, it has no chlorophyll. Plants use green pigment to capture light, but this mushroom cannot photosynthesize to save its life. I do not need a single photon of light to grow it. No grow lamps, zero light. It is a fungus operating under different biological rules. Think about what my garden usually demands from me. My tomatoes need 5 months of sun and constant watering. My lettuce just dies in the summer heat. My peppers fail if it gets too cold. Every crop I grow is a slave to the sun. This mushroom is locked into none of those things. My raised beds need hours of direct sun. This thing just needs a plastic bag and a dark closet. I can grow it year-round. I can grow it in a city apartment or a cabin. It does not care where I live. Its biological efficiency reaches 130%. I think that number is truly mind-blowing. 130% means I get back more food by weight than the material I put in. No animal or plant can do that. Only fungi have that kind of power. And I realized the reason they can do that is because they are not what we think. That mushroom I buy for $4 a pound is actually a predator. It hunts for food. It kills with chemical weapons. I found the story of this discovery in a forgotten Canadian laboratory. I traced the archives back to the late 1970s. George Barron was doing work that many others called pointless. I learned he was hunting microscopic predators, but not the kind of hunters I expected. Not wolves or hawks. He was tracking fungi that were born to kill. Barron collected soil samples from across Ontario. I can see him at his microscope watching fungal threads trap tiny worms. These were not passive organisms in the dirt. They were hunters, and Barron wanted to understand their secrets. He forgot one dish at the back of a shelf for 6 months or even longer. The exact timeline is lost now, but when I look at what happened next, it was totally unexpected. The fungus sprouted a mushroom, a large edible oyster mushroom like I see in the store every week. Barron and his student identified it immediately. It was the common Pleurotus austriatus. I am amazed that the predator they studied for years was already sitting on supermarket shelves. Nobody knew. They published the findings in April 6, 1984. I read that 10 species of fungi attack worms, but the lethal mechanism stunned me. Thorne described watching a worm try one last time to wiggle away before it went completely still. The weapon was something from science fiction. Tiny structures called toxocysts, shaped like little lollipops. Each one is smaller than pollen. When a worm touches one, I saw that it bursts open instantly. The toxin paralyzes the worm within 30 seconds. Within a day, the fungal threads have digested it completely. Nothing is left. Barron called them his lethal lollipops. This was more than a curiosity. To me, this was a foundational revelation. The mushroom I toss into my pasta is a carnivore. Like this video if you find this terrifying. This discovery raised a question for me. If this organism evolved to kill, what else can it do? I found the answer in a forest during a food crisis. Germany was starving in 1917. The naval blockade had cut off their imports. 1/3 of their food supply was just gone. I see the drafts stripping farms of every worker. Then the potato harvest fails completely. Blight swept the fields, killing the nation's staple food. I learned they called that winter of 1916 the turnip winter turnips were literally all that was left. Rations dropped to 1,000 calories. In my research, I found stories of children just collapsing in classrooms. I see hospitals full of starvation cases, bodies swelling as organs shut down. By the time the war ended, 762,000 German civilians had died from malnutrition. Looking at these records, it is just a staggering number. I read reports of 80,000 kids starving in 1916 alone. Yet in this horror, a scientist at the Prussian Forest Academy found a weird solution. Richard Falk became the Academy's first mycology professor in 1910. I see him as a pure scientist, not a politician who saw what others missed. This fungus turned waste into protein in weeks, not seasons. I realized it didn't need anything the war had stolen. No fields, no fertilizer, no sun. In 1917, Falk put out a paper that I can tell was incredibly urgent. It was about growing oyster mushrooms on tree stumps. To me, this wasn't just abstract research. This was survival tech written during a famine killing thousands every week. I watched how Falk used straw and stumps for his mycelium. He showed for the first time in our scientific records that we could grow this deliberately. It wasn't just luck or something I'd forage in the wild. It was grown reliably from materials that would otherwise just rot. The idea was radical. Every city was surrounded by woods full of dead timber. Every farm had straw. Every house had waste lying around. In 3 weeks, that trash became protein. While fields sat empty and supply lines broke, I found that Falk offered a way out. He proved there was a third path. You didn't even need fields. You didn't need the sun or rain or anything. The war had destroyed. If you love history, subscribe. All you needed was waste and a little bit of patience. Falk married Olga in 1910. I've seen how they worked together for years. But this wasn't a happy ending. After the war, anti-Semitic students began to hunt him. In 1933, he lost his 20-year position. I saw the records. The reason they gave was horrifyingly clear. He was Jewish. So Falk fled Nazi Germany for the United States. His brother Edward was murdered in Auschwitz. Richard himself died on January 1st, 1955, here in America. He was so far from those German forests where he first grew mushrooms to save his people. Falk proved it worked, but I know he couldn't have seen what we'd find 67 years later. The secret molecular mechanism. What we found was truly bizarre. For 40 years after the discovery in 1984, the toxin stayed a total mystery. I know researchers saw the mushrooms killing worms. They could see the toxocysts under their microscopes. They could watch the paralysis happen in real time, but they couldn't identify the chemical weapon the mushroom was using. In 2023, I saw that Yen-Ping Su's team finally published the answer in Science Advances. If you find this fascinating, please subscribe. Su's team went on a massive genetic fishing trip. I've read how they screened 12,000 different clones of the mushrooms searching for the ones that had lost their lethal edge. They found 13. Every single one was missing its toxocysts. The team finally identified the compound. To me, it seems deceptively simple. It is 3-octanone, an 8-carbon molecule. When that toxocyst bursts, this ketone disrupts cell membranes all through the nematode's tiny body. Calcium floods into the wrong cells. I can only imagine the nervous system firing out of control. Muscles lock up. It dies from within. Sue called it nerve gas in a lollipop, but it goes deeper. I found research from Mexico connecting this carnivory to the mushroom's power to digest solid wood. Researchers found that silencing a gene called lacase-2, an enzyme, used to break down wood, stopped both the toxin and the mushroom's growth. To me, it's clear that the same system used to digest dead trees is what's required for killing prey. Both processes depend on the exact same molecular machinery. This isn't a Venus flytrap waiting for an insect. It's much more active. This is active chemical warfare from a fungus you can buy at any grocery store for $4 a pound. Smash that like button. And it does this because of where it lives. Dead wood has carbon, but no nitrogen. The worms in those logs are tiny packets of nitrogen. I see this carnivory as a way to supplement their diet. It is just like carnivorous plants in a bog, but this strategy uses nerve agents in exploding lollipops instead of sticky leaves. I know of 700 fungal species that trap worms, but the way this mushroom does it is unique. To me, it is truly a marvel of evolutionary biology. Now imagine you're a tiny nematode thin as a hair crawling through rotting wood. You're just looking for some bacteria to eat. It's dark and damp. It smells like decay, which to you smells like a feast. You aren't worried. You're the most successful multicellular animal on the planet. There are 57 billion of you for every human. You've thrived for 500 million years. You brush against what looks like a tiny ball on a stick. Then that ball explodes. Không khí quanh tôi đã quánh chặt hóa học một loại cetone 8 carbon bắt đầu phá hủy màng tế bào của tôi. Các ion cận xị tràn ngập tế bào cơ. Cơ thể tôi co rút không kiểm soát. Tôi cố gắng nhúc nhích nhưng hoàn toàn bất lực. Trong 30 giây tôi bị liệt hoàn toàn nhưng vẫn còn sống. Suốt 24 giờ sau, những sợi nằm đâm xuyên qua da lận khắp cơ thể và tiêu hóa tôi từ trong ra ngoài. Từng phân tử nitơ amino acid hay protein trong người tôi đều bị mạng lưới nằm này hấp thu, không còn để lại bất cứ dấu vết nào. Tôi chỉ là thức ăn, và sinh vật đã ăn tôi chính là loại nam bùn đô la các bạn vẫn mua ở siêu thị để xào nấu. Nhận đăng ký ngay nhé! Sinh vật này không chỉ ăn gỗ, nghiên cứu xác nhận nó có thể biến bã cà phê các tông quần áo cũ mùn cưa, hay thậm chí đặt nhiệm dầu thành protein. Lượng protein chiếm 20 đến 30% trọng lượng khô và chứa đủ 9 loại amino acid. Chỉ cần 1,8 gallon nước để tạo ra một cân nằm. Một cân thịt bò cần tới gần 1.800 gallon nước. Một mẫu Anh trong Nam có thể cho sản lượng 1 triệu cân thực phẩm mỗi năm. Một mẫu Anh đồng cỏ chỉ thu được khoảng 300 cân thịt bò. Lượng phát thải carbon cũng chỉ bằng 0,7 cân khí carbonic trên một cân nằm. Một cân thịt bò thải ra gấp 14 lần con số đó. Những con số này thực sự gây kinh ngạc cho bất cứ ai nhìn vào. Năm 2025 NASA đã chú ý. Các nhà nghiên cứu trên trạm vũ trụ quốc tế đã nuôi nam bào ngư thành công từ những chiếc áo phông cũ và rác thực vật. Những bộ đồ cũ vốn bị đốt bỏ này đã trở thành thực phẩm. Hỗn hợp 70% bông và 30% vỗ đầu nành còn tốt hơn cả rơm ra truyền thống. Nam thu hoạch được rất an toàn với lượng vi khuẩn thấp hơn Nam thương mại. Tháng 4 năm 2025, nhiệm vụ sứ mệnh nằm đã đưa Nam vào quỹ đạo cuộc. Một phi hành gia người Úc đã theo dõi Nam phát triển trong môi trường không trọng lực. NASA hiện xếp dinh dưỡng là thách thức quan trọng thứ 11 khi thám hiểm không gian. Ralph Fisher, cứu quản lý của NASA, đã thừa nhận một điều đáng kinh ngạc. Nam chính là kẻ chiến thắng tuyệt đối cho hệ thống thực phẩm bền vững ngoài vũ trụ. Nhóm nghiên cứu từ Đại học California còn tiến xa hơn. Họ dùng quang hợp nhân tạo để biến khí carbonic và nước thành oxy và acetat qua điện phân. Acetat được đưa vào buồng tối để nuôi nam bào ngư. Không cần đặt không ánh sáng, chỉ cần hơi thở và nước để biến thành thức ăn cho chúng ta. Kết quả này đã được đăng trên tạp chí Thực phẩm tự nhiên. Quy trình này chuyển hóa năng lượng thành sinh khởi hiệu quả hơn cả quang hợp tự nhiên. Đó chính là quá trình mà mỗi loài thực vật trên trái đất đang phụ thuộc vào. Tôi muốn các bạn hãy dành một chút thời gian để suy nghĩ về điều đó. Các nhà khoa học đã tìm ra cách trong thực phẩm hiệu quả hơn tự nhiên, và sinh vật kỳ diệu đó vẫn đang nằm im lìm trên kẻ rau ở siêu thị gần nhà bạn. Nếu NASA tin dùng nằm để nuôi phi hành gia đi sao Hỏa, tại sao chúng ta không tự trông nó trong bếp ngay bây giờ? Hãy để lại ý kiến bên dưới nhé. Câu trả lời không phải là một âm mưu đen tối nào cả. Chẳng có biên bản bí mật nào giấu giếm điều này ở đây hết. Sự kiềm hãm này bắt nguồn từ lâu đời và kỳ lạ hơn thế. Năm 1887, nhà nam học W.D. Hay đã viết một lời tiên tri. Ông quan sát thấy sự sợ hãi và ghét bỏ Nam không phải là điều phổ biến. Nó chỉ xuất hiện chủ yếu ở người Anh, Mỹ, Canada và Úc mà thôi. Những năm 1950, vợ chồng nhà nam học Gordon Watson đã hệ thống hóa điều này. Họ chia các nền văn hóa thành hai nhóm rõ rệt. Nhóm số Nam gồm các xã hội nói tiếng Anh và nhóm yêu Nam như Nga, Ý, Trung Quốc, Nhật Bản. Thuật ngữ số Nam đã được đưa vào từ điện tử 57. Nguyên nhân có thể truy tìm được. Các nhà nghiên cứu đã liên kết nỗi sợ này đặc biệt với quá trình công nghiệp hóa của nhân loại. Khi cách mạng công nghiệp kéo người dân rồi làng quê vào nhà máy truyền thống hái lượm đã bị phá vỡ. Kiến thức về Nam vốn được truyền miệng qua nhiều thế hệ. Nhưng những người bà hiểu biết về Nam đã không thể theo con cháu đến các xưởng máy ở Manchester hay Pila đến Fia. Kiến thức đó không được ghi chép. Nó chỉ sống trong đôi tay, đôi mắt và ký ức của con người. Chỉ cần một mạch xích trong chuỗi truyền thừa đó bị đứt gãy là mọi thứ sẽ biến mất. Một thế hệ chuyển đến thành phố và không bao giờ vào rừng cùng người lớn nữa. Sự đứt gãy đó đã biến thành những quy định và nỗi sợ rằng nam luôn nguy hiểm. Sự mỉa mai ở đây thật kinh khủng. Ngày nay chúng ta biết rằng chỉ có 2% các loài nam được biết đến là thực sự có độc. Vậy mà văn hóa phương Tây coi rẻ cả 15.000 loài nằm. Trong khi đó, ở Nga các gia đình đi hái nam vào cuối tuần như người Mỹ đi siêu thị. Tại Ý, nam thông tươi được bán ở chỗ với sự tin tưởng tuyệt đối. Ở Trung Quốc và Nhật Bản, nuôi nam là ngành công nghiệp hàng tỷ đô la với kinh nghiệm lâu đời. Nỗi sợ hãi này không phải bản năng của con người. Nó chỉ là một sản phẩm của văn hóa mà chúng ta bị áp đặt vào. Nó được cài đặt vào tổ tiên chúng ta chưa đầy 200 năm trước. Các yếu tố kinh tế càng làm củng cố thêm sự quên lãng này của nhân loại. Thị trường nam toàn cầu đạt 73 tỷ đô la vào năm 2025, nhưng ngành công nghiệp thịt lại tạo ra hơn 1,4 nghìn tỷ đô la. Nam bị lép về tới tận 20 lần. Bạn không thể cấp bằng sáng chế cho một sinh vật có thể dễ dàng lớn lên từ rác thải được. Bạn không thể ép người ta phụ thuộc vào nó. Chẳng có hạt giống độc quyền nào để bán cho nông dân mỗi mùa vụ cả. Cũng chẳng cần các loại phân bón hay thuộc diệt cổ đắt tiền nào. Trong Nam chỉ cần sự tỉ mỉ của con người chứ không cần các đế chế công nghiệp lớn. Hiệp hội Nam Mỹ chỉ là một cái tên mở nhạc bên cạnh Hiệp hội Thịt bò Quốc gia. Đó là một thực tế phụ phàng trong ngành thực phẩm. Chẳng cần sự đàn áp nào ở đây cả. Sức mạnh kinh tế khổng lồ của ngành protein hiện tại đã tạo ra một rào cản mà ngành Nam khó lòng vượt qua. Nam tươi rất nhanh hồng. Chúng ta không thể vận chuyển chúng đi khắp toàn cầu một cách dễ dàng như thịt bò đông lạnh được. Bạn không thể tích trữ chúng hàng tháng trời như ngũ cốc. Thời hạn sử dụng chỉ tính bằng ngày buộc sản xuất phải mang tính địa phương và phân tán. Họ hưởng lợi từ một cộng đồng luôn sở Nam. Hãy thay đổi tư duy và tự trọng Nam ngay hôm nay để bảo vệ tương lai bền vững của chúng ta nhé. Nature has organisms that prove this, but they get zero ad budget or cultural space. We forget them, but for me, forgetting is never permanent. Whatever we put away for a long time can be found again. In 2009, two Berkeley students were sitting in business class when their professor mentioned a very strange little fact in passing. Mushrooms, he said, could grow on coffee grounds. Nikhil Arora and Alejandro Velez were studying business and economics. They had corporate jobs waiting, but that single sentence wouldn't leave them alone. They began experimenting in their frat house kitchen, collecting used coffee grounds from various campus coffee shops. Waste that would have gone straight to a landfill. They filled plastic bins with the grounds mixed in oyster mushroom spawn ordered online, and then they just waited. They really didn't know what they were doing. They had no mycology training. They had never grown anything. But within weeks, mushrooms were erupting from garbage inside a fraternity house in Berkeley, California. That moment changed both of their lives. They built the first prototypes of their signature product, a cardboard kit that grows 1.5 pounds of oyster mushrooms from 2 harvests in about 10 days. I find that totally amazing. Everything you need comes in one package. Open the box, spray it with water twice daily, and harvest within a week. This setup takes less time than making a pot of coffee. When corporate offers came from Goldman Sachs and consulting firms, they turned them all down to pursue this dream. I love their courage. They were encouraged by Alice Waters, the woman who started the farm to table movement at Chez Panisse. Back to the Roots has since grown into the #1 organic gardening company in America. Make sure to subscribe for more. Their products are sold in 10,000 stores nationwide, including Home Depot and Target. They have diverted 1 million pounds of waste from landfills and donated growing kits to over 10,000 classrooms. It is a huge positive impact that I admire. But the revival extends far beyond Berkeley. In Rotterdam, a company called Rotterswam collects coffee waste by cargo bike and produces thousands of kilograms of mushrooms monthly from an old tropical swimming pool. The building was abandoned. The coffee was garbage. The mushrooms turned both into a business. Mark Sleggers, the co-founder, described their philosophy simply. Nature makes no waste. If you look at nature and learn how it works, you can profit. In England, an operation called Grow Cycle ran the first urban mushroom farm from an empty office building, collecting coffee grounds by bike and turning them into food in a vacant space. In Brooklyn, a company called Smallhold grew mushrooms in shipping containers under the Williamsburg Bridge, producing tens of thousands of pounds per week in a space smaller than a studio apartment. It shows me that we can grow food anywhere. If you like these urban farming stories, hit that subscribe button now. Paul Stamets said every community should have a mushroom farm to build soil carbon and provide local food from waste. A 2025 study from Cornell University found that oyster mushrooms have a 94% success rate among first-time growers like you and me. It's the highest success rate they've ever seen in their trials. I think that's a sign to start. The highest variety tested. Honestly, this is not difficult. This is not advanced mycology. This is the single most forgiving food production system available to a human being. So here is exactly how you start. You need 4 things. First, get pasteurized straw or cardboard. Cut the straw into 4-inch pieces or tear the cardboard into small strips. Soak it in water heated to 170 degrees for at least 2 hours. This kills competing organisms without sterilizing the substrate or the material completely. Drain it until it's damp but not dripping. Second, get grain spawn from suppliers like Fungi Perfecti or North Spore. I have found them very reliable. A 5-pound bag costs roughly $20 and will inoculate multiple batches. Third, get a container. A perforated plastic bag works. A 5-gallon bucket with small holes drilled every 6 inches works even better. Fourth, an environment between 60 and 75 degrees with humidity and fresh air. That is truly all. No soil, no grow lights, no fertilizer, no garden bed. A closet works. A garage works. Under your kitchen sink works. A spare bathroom works. Layer the damp substrate and spawn in your container like lasagna. 1 inch of substrate, a sprinkle of spawn, another inch of substrate, another sprinkle. Fill it up. Close the bag or put a loose lid on the bucket. Place it somewhere dark and stable. The timeline is precise. 12 to 21 days for the spawn to colonize it. You'll see white thread like mycelium spreading through the cardboard like a slow-motion web. I keep it in total darkness during this growing phase. Mushrooms don't need light to grow their root network. Then move it somewhere with indirect light and fresh air. Within 3 to 5 days, tiny pin-like structures will appear through the holes. These are your baby mushrooms starting to grow. Then 4 to 7 days from pins to full harvest size. Your first harvest can happen in just 19 days from setup. And here is the part that separates this from your garden. After you harvest, the mycelium is still alive and ready. I find that amazing. It's not done. It will fruit once again. 3 to 4 successive flushes are typical, spaced 2 weeks apart. Between flushes, soak the material in cold water for a few hours to rehydrate it, then put it right back. One 5-minute setup gives you a month or more of recurring harvests from the same container, producing food over and over again with nothing added except water. On optimized substrates like coffee grounds, biological efficiency reaches 130%. It's the most efficient system I have seen. More food out than material in. Honestly, no plant in your garden will ever do that. No seed you will ever buy comes with that promise. When the substrate is finally spent, it becomes excellent compost for your garden. I use it all the time. It has already been broken down by powerful decomposition enzymes. The mushrooms feed me, and then their leftovers feed my soil. It is a perfect circular system. Nothing is wasted. If you prefer to skip the setup, pre-made grow kits are available at Home Depot or Target for around $20. Please leave a comment if you've tried this. I open the box, mist it twice a day, and harvest in 10 days. My kit comes with a 100% guaranteed growth promise. When I want to forage, I look for oysters on dying hardwoods. In North America, I find them mostly from October through April. I scan oak or maple logs for fan clusters, but I stay alert for the deadly angel wings. Those lookalikes caused 17 deaths in 2004. I use 3 specific markers to tell them apart. First, I check the wood. Oysters only grow on hardwood. Angel wings prefer conifers, like pine. If I see them on spruce, I stay away. Second, I feel the caps. My oysters are thick and fleshy. Angel wings feel thin and translucent, almost like paper. For my third check, I take a spore print. My oyster spores leave a lilac gray print. The dangerous ones produce pure white. I never eat anything until I am certain. If I have any doubt, I leave it behind. I realized I am not just gardening here. I am actually waking up an ancient biological technology. I am running a biological technology refined over 100 million years in rotting forests. It turns my waste into food without soil, sunlight, or pesticides, using tiny amounts of water. My recycling bin is basically a steak dinner to this organism. My old coffee grounds are a feast. That bag of straw in my garage is just a protein factory I haven't switched on yet. Everything I thought a garden needed: the soil, the sun, the space. This organism bypasses every rule. It is the only food I can produce in a pitch-black closet using materials from my recycling bin. I get a harvest in days, not months. This isn't a conspiracy. We just lost the knowledge through collective amnesia and a focus on the bottom line. 108 years ago, Richard Falk used this to feed people during a brutal German winter. He died in exile, but I still have his knowledge today. 41 years ago, George Barron proved this mushroom is a predator armed with chemical weapons that would stun a military scientist. Just recently, we identified the nerve agent inside a simple ketone that dismantles cells with only 8 carbon atoms. Last year, NASA grew them on T-shirts aboard the space station, calling fungi the most promising food source for deep space. This year, it became the first organism grown in orbit circling the planet at 17,000 miles per hour while converting my waste into protein. Yet, if I walk into a garden center and ask for help, I just get strange looks. They just point me toward the seeds and the outdoor plants. The entire industry, the seeds, the fertilizer, the grow lights is built around plants and sunlight. This organism breaks every single rule so it has no shelf space, no aisle, and no section in the store. It is not because it fails, but because we forgot. This fungus does not need me at all. It has been turning death into life for 100 million years. But honestly, I might need it. Now I know exactly how to use it. If you found my journey fascinating, subscribe and join me for more stories. Tell me in the comments if you have ever grown mushrooms or if I have finally convinced you to start. My setup took 5 minutes. My first harvest took less than 3 weeks. Once I saw mushrooms erupting from a bag of straw in my dark closet, everything I believed about growing my own food changed forever.